Are you looking for some quick and easy ways to use up your pattern paper? Hi, I'm Jess from JessCrafts.com and I'm here to help you make the most of your crafty supplies and time. So let's take a look. Today I have a Halloween paper pad and a paper busting template. So this is a 6x8 paper busting template that makes slimline cards. So I'm going to take one piece of 6x8 paper and make two slimline cards. Because this is a Halloween pad, I'm going to make one Halloween card or card set and one non-Halloween card set. So I'll make 4 cards in all. And I just want to do this because so many paper pads have like clearly Halloween or holiday inspired images, but then they also have papers in the collection that work for something outside of the holiday. And so I want to encourage you to look at your paper pad in that way. And also when you are crafting for a season, to maybe make a second set so that you are using up this paper that because sometimes people only pull out their Halloween paper at Halloween time or Christmas paper at Christmas time, and you're missing out on that opportunity to use up those papers if you're not making the non-holiday cards with them. So that's why this year I'm trying to do both with each of my paper pads that I'm sharing with you, if it makes sense. So I love this witch hat paper, and I'm going to be using that, especially because the back is such a simple pattern that I know it will be good for the spotlight part of this card, because as you can see, this sketch basically is one long piece of paper with a circle in the center that I have to cut out. And so I'm going to use the back side as the circle and this as the main paper piece. And my sketch is horizontal, but I'm going to make vertical cards because this pattern paper is vertical. This paper was in the collection, and I took out one of these and I cut up a bunch of the little elements. I fussy cut them out. You could try something like a scan and cut. These do tend to be a little bit tricky with a scan and cut. A scan and cut really prefers black outlines. I like to use EK Success Cutter Bee scissors for my fussy cutting. I've had them for 10 plus years, and I like to move the paper more than my scissors when I'm fussy cutting. Those are my two biggest, tips or whatever I want to say about fussy cutting, is a fine detail sharp scissor with a long enough blade without being crazy long, and moving the paper. Okay, then there's this like fern paper that has this very simple purple on the back, and I think I'm going to make that my non-Halloween card. Cutting for this template is extremely easy. You're going to take your 6x8 piece of paper and cut it in half at the 3-inch mark to create a 3x8-inch paper, which will be the main part of your card. You're going to also cut a mat for this, and the circle piece is just cut right out of the center of this. So this is a way of adding something like more dynamic, like not just squares and rectangles, without having to leave scraps, because we're just going to cover the circle that we cut. So I have some stitched circle dies, and the sketch calls for about a 2¼ inch circle to be cut out of there. And that's just because that leaves a fair amount of room on each side. Of course, your limit would be 3 inches, and that would be pushing it because it's only 3 inches wide. So you're basically just looking for your set of circle dies. Which one could you pick where the next one in the series also fits on your 3-inch. Similarly, your mats for this card are very easy to cut because this is a 3x8 piece. So you need 3¼ by 8½. So I'm going to cut the 3¼ off of the 11-inch side of my 8½ by 11 paper, and then the 8½ side I'll just trim that little extra bit off. And so now I have the main mat that I need, but it's also where I'm going to cut the circle mat out of, because I want a circle mat that's just a little bit bigger than the circle I cut out of the pattern paper, in part because it covers the hole and gives you a little bit of leeway. So it looks like I may have not cut it perfectly out of the center of that pattern paper, which you could of course measure, but because this circle here is a little bit larger, I can kind of shift it around just as long as I cover up that hole. Once I have cut out my paper and my mats, I can start assembling all of the cards. And as you see, that circle that's cut out of there, it's going to align pretty well with the paper as I cover it up. And so I am using, as I said, the directional pattern paper. I chose this black cardstock because I knew that the pattern that I was going to show was mostly white, and so I really wanted to make it stand out from the white background. So instead of doing white on white, putting that really clear black line in between helps a lot. The other choice I would have probably made is purple in this instance. However, the opposite side of that fern type paper was purple, and so this wouldn't stand out on it. So these are the colors that I'm going to decorate with. I have these 2 purple pieces and these 2 orange pieces. They're going to be the focal points on my card, and they're also going to get their mat and be placed on top here to cover that circle that's kind of a gap in the middle of our card right now. I think for the Halloween cards, I am probably going to go maybe with just the witches' hats that I cut out, because that is what's in the background. So it'll be very matchy-matchy, but that's not always a bad thing. Sometimes it's okay to just take the simple route and just match things. Plus, they can, of course, be used on non-Halloween cards. They are distinctly witches' hats. The cats, oh, let's move over to a non-Halloween card. We have the fern background, and then we'll be putting this purple on top, okay? And I'm gonna still challenge myself to use images from the set, but just lean away from Halloween. And you know, some people might still think Halloween, but you gotta remember, it's harder for you to see it as not Halloween because you have all the Halloween context around you. But when they get this card in a vacuum, like, you know, not sitting next to Halloween stuff, or if they get it like in May or something, they're not, like, Halloween's not going to be on their mind, so they might not associate it with it as much. So there are these cats, and this one, he's a kind of a dark gray kitty cat instead of a traditional black cat, so I think he works pretty well. There was also this really pretty floral design that I cut out. The scale is a little bit small for the card overall, so it might be something where you want to add an additional sentiment or something to really give it a little bit more oomph, but it has that same fern background. You could layer it with this feather to kind of add more to the arrangement. That might be a fun way to make it have a bit more substantial sentiment. I'm going to be using My Favorite Things Itty Bitty Boos. There's a whole itty bitty collection. So there's like a Christmas set and there's a general set, and then I think for even more occasions there are sets. And I think that these work really well if you find that you're just trying to sneak sentiments into small spaces, which is something that comes up for me, particularly when I'm working with making like a large number of cards. It's kind of nice to be able to stamp directly onto the pattern paper, but then you're also usually working with a limited space. So having smaller sentiments like this and having a lot of different choices in this small size can be really helpful. So it's another peek at some other of the itty bitty sentiments. Having them for Christmas, also super helpful. When you go to assemble these, because you've cut a hole out of the center and then you're going to attach this back, I don't like to try to attach this all the way to the card base, because then I have to like kind of push it in a little bit, and it's not a super big deal, but just to kind of make things a little bit more flat for it to lay on, I like to take one of the scraps of cardstock that I created while making my mat, since that's pretty inevitable, and just put it behind there so that it's kind of propped up and it's a little bit more even across. Small detail, but it can make your cards look just a little bit more well thought out. Also, for your adhesive, sometimes because if your adhesive's not particularly strong, if you're trying to push it in like that to get it to stick, it's more likely to fall off later. And so if you want your paper or your card to be really secure, you're gonna wanna do things like this so that your adhesive doesn't have to work so hard to stay on. Back to my itty bitty sentiments for my non-Halloween card as well. And also I decided to cut one long banner instead of 2 smaller ones, because I was just going to have a little bit of it hanging out from behind the die cut. I'm not going to use a full banner. So like here, I want to tuck it underneath the cat and have my sentiment there. So only cutting the banner one time, it saves you a small amount of time. It's not really a big deal. Head over to jesscrafts.com to pick up your free template. Even though it's super simple, it is great to have it printed out so that you don't forget this idea, put it in a binder. And if you really enjoy using my templates and you want to help me keep them free to share with everyone, you can join me over at Patreon at patreon.com/jesscrafts, I believe it is. The link will be in the video description. If you found this video inspiring, here's another video where you can find more ideas for enjoying your crafty time and supplies. Let me know you like this video with a share to your crafty community. Subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss the next template or tutorial, and check the video description for product links. See you in the next video.